Welcome to Writing and Influence, the podcast where words meet impact. I'm your host, Elaine Acker, and I believe that publishing, whether it's a book, a blog, or even a simple social post, has the power to amplify your influence and change lives. Your words have power. Let's start writing with purpose. Welcome, everybody. Today, I am honored to welcome someone whose work has really shaped how we see Texas, and someone I've had the privilege of knowing for, I guess, nearly 30 years now through our shared work and friendships. This is Wyman Meinzer, and he's the official state photographer of Texas. His images have captured the wild, quiet, and really often the unseen corners of the state like I think no one else has. We first met when I was working with Texas Parks and Wildlife, and so was he. I was writing and working on ad campaigns, and Wyman was out capturing powerful images alongside our photo editor, Bill Reeves, who just happens to also be my hubby. Wyman may have the rugged look of a frontiersman, but don't let that fool you. His camera lens tells deeply poetic stories, and these days I find myself almost as drawn to his words. So even his social media posts can read like short essays. They're full of insight and emotion and paint pictures that I think are every bit as vivid as his photography. So I'm happy to welcome you, Wyman. I got to describe you as the man, the myth, and the legend.
Sounds good.
Now, you've had an extraordinary career.
Yes.
It started with that degree in wildlife management and eventually landed you book publishing opportunities and cover shots on really prestigious publications, including Smithsonian and National Geographic books, Time and Newsweek and Audubon and all the things. But I know that behind all of these iconic images, there's a challenge. So my question is this: what is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in your work or in life? And how did that really shape what you create?
Probably living where I was, where I do live, where I'm not, I was never around other photographers to discuss techniques and stuff. You know, you had to establish your own style, which was really a positive thing in the long run, but it was a long run to get there. I had to depend on sending imagery to magazines, to the editors like Bill and David Baxter and Gary Gretter at Sports Afield, and saying, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And then just going from there. It was a struggle there for a few years, and then you finally get into that publishing lane, and then it all just kind of comes together. But it was not easy at all. I can assure you it was. But it was very fulfilling.
Yeah. And that kind of resilience, I guess, that it takes to live. We're referring to where you live. So for anybody who doesn't know, Wyman is up in the panhandle of Texas. How would you describe the panhandle? How would you describe
Well,
this
actually,
environment you're
I
in?
live in the rolling plains, which is just east of the what they call the delineating line of the Panhandle. It's just a lot of badlands country, real broken
Mhm.
country, almost archaic-looking land. It's kind of a forgotten land. And of course, you've got your mesquites and your river bottoms and such. When I first started photographing, no one was coming into this region and shooting. And I saw an opportunity to be the one person to introduce the rolling plains to the viewing public. That was my goal at the very beginning, was to send my images to Bill and David and say, hey guys, what about this as a possible article? And they went for it. They really helped me a lot through the years. They supported me so much. And the Rolling Plains has been a very positive influence on my work.
Yeah. Well, and you think about over time, I mean, you worked your tush off to get to understand photography, to interact with these editors at different magazines, and to achieve this extreme level, I would say, of success. And then photography and publishing really changed.
Yeah, it
So
did.
talk to me about
Yeah.
that. I mean, what's changed the most
Well,
about how you work today
uh,
versus then?
I don't shoot for magazines much anymore. Maybe Predator Nation, I'll
Yeah.
write an article for them. But basically, the magazines, I don't even really look at them much anymore because that's something in the past, and I've just gone on to book
Yeah.
publishing and that type of thing, and shooting properties for our brokerage firm, which I use the same techniques to shoot properties as I did when shooting for all the magazines. Landscape approach, strong foregrounds, and leading elements throughout the photograph. And it really seems to resonate. At this point, it's just mainly real estate photography is what I do.
Well, and I wanted to get into that because to me, that's part of that transformation. It's like the markets have changed, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore what you do has changed, but you found a way to leverage every ounce of the power of what you were doing in this new real estate venture. And
Yes.
you got into that how long ago now?
What I think like maybe 5 years or so, something like that.
Yeah.
Time
And so
passes quickly.
all of it does. All that knowledge and skill and the ability, I think, to see a property through your lens, literally, is a real
Yeah,
gift for
you know, and
landowners.
it's like when I'm out shooting, and I've often reflected on this, why that, well, my approach is the same approach that I use in magazine photography because I have an audience.
Yeah.
Each magazine, like Texas Highways versus Texas Parks and Wildlife versus Sports and Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, each of them have an audience. And so I'm almost thinking inclusively all of these magazines whenever I shoot a property. There's going to be wildlife, there's going to be landscape, there's going to be interior design. I pull from all the experiences that I've come away with over all the years, the decades of shooting for magazines to shoot these
And
properties.
that's so important to focus on audience because so many people, whether they're doing photography or writing, you have this impulse to share the thing that you want to share in the way
Hmm.
you want to share it.
Right.
And if you're doing it that way, you're kind of just crossing your fingers and hoping that it's going to resonate with somebody. Whereas if you put that audience first, you can find a
Hmm.
way to speak to them that I think is really personal.
Well, I think what was important over the years was that in shooting for editors, they depended on the way I saw the subjects. I remember one from New York telling me one time, he said, I love the angle from which you shoot, that you use in your imagery. You shoot low, you shoot strong. I fall back on those words and use the light, use the angles, even though I don't have an editor that's going to work me over whenever I send my images in and say, hey, man, you need to go back and redo this. But I employ all of those angles in my real estate work, and it's very successful.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
And so I'm going to hold up a stack of books. Those of
okay.
you who are listening, I'm holding up a very heavy stack of books. So these are Wyman's books. So if you want to find his work, you can certainly go online and find it. What I love about these books, Wyman, is that it it's the talent that you brought to the table, but it's also the people you got to collaborate with.
Absolutely.
And this particular one was a collaboration with John Graves, who
Oh man, that
d-
was that
describe.
was
How do you describe John Graves?
John Graves was a consummate gentleman, just beyond description. I mean, I love his style of writing. Ever since years ago, it was suggested, Goodbye to a River, that I should read that book. And I read that book soon thereafter, and it was like, wow, this guy is really a great, great author. And his style, he could, one sentence was a paragraph, but he could make it all work. I've almost styled my own writing, try to sort of in his shadow. That's as close as I can get to him, is just his shadow. But John Graves was just an awesome person to work with. So talented, so kind, and such a gentleman.
Well, so when did writing become such a big part of your expression?
Well, when I started at Texas Tech in '69, I remember freshman English, and I remember the Mr. Lightfoot. I'll never forget him. He wanted us to write an autobiography, and so I wrote and handed it in, and I made a D, and I go, wow, boy, this is something. And so I decided that, I needed to really kind of up the game here a little bit. And so got through that and got into the course of the literature section of the next English course. And then I got into technical writing. And technical writing I could do and was actually achieving things in it, making decent grades. But the writing, I actually started writing when I was a kid. I still have the stories, true
Oh my
stories by
gosh.
Wyman Meinzer. And I still have them in longhand. One of them was 30 pages long. And I would
I'm
write
not
them,
worried.
in the seventh and eighth grade. But what really got me into writing was I believe in 1981, when I was working with Bill and David Baxter there at the magazine. And David Baxter asked me to write an article on predators, on coyotes. Of course, that was my shtick. I mean, I loved predators and was a professional predator hunter for years after graduation. And so, well, David, I don't know how to write. And he said, well, give it a shot. So I wrote about a 1,500 word piece and handed it in. I believe it was on a yellow notepad. And David called and he said, hey, this writing is actually better than some of my guys who write all the time. And that really gave me a lift and gave me the incentive to keep trying. And it went from there.
Isn't it amazing how the right person at the right time can have such an influence
Absolutely.
on our lives and our confidence
Abs-
and our trajectory
yes.
in life? Wow.
I've met so many people like that has just elevated me, mentally, to be able to have confidence in myself. And whereas otherwise, I may have just kind of kicked it off to the side and just said, I can't do that. But they just pushed me.
Yeah.
And David and Bill both, they were there at just the right time. It was perfect.
So when you think about, kind of giving that lift, giving that push to people who are trying to become photographers and writers now, and again, recognizing that the market and the space for writers and photographers is so different. What would
It's
you
so
s I know
different.
you used to teach at Tech for a while, so, I mean, what do you tell
Yes.
people who are trying to break in?
It's so much harder. In a way, it's a lot harder than it was just because of digital. When I was
Mhm.
teaching at Tech, I made my students, up until the last couple of years, I was just adjunct and doing it part time, but I did for 12 years. And I would tell them, you know, I want you to use chrome film because that is a teaching moment using chrome film. You can't, just erase the shot and redo it. It's not a chipping thing where you can just chip it and go, I'll reshoot that. You got to get it right from the very beginning. And I started out with Kodachrome, then Velvia. And so nowadays with digital, I still shoot just like I'm shooting Chrome. I don't
Yeah.
just throw up and just shoot and go, well, I'll change it later in Photoshop. It's got to be on the money in order to get your exposure right. And of course, with autofocus, it's going to be right most of the time with autofocus. And surprisingly, I still do a lot of manual focus in my photography. I found that in teaching the
Mm.
last couple of years, when I had to go to digital, you couldn't even get Velvia chrome film anymore. I think you can still get it. Some people are kind of making a 360 and going back to a film. I just found that it made a lot of students lazy. They would say, well, I'll go out at 9 o'clock instead of being there at sunrise. When I was making them shoot chrome film, I go, you're going to have to be there in the right light. I am your editor. I'm
Mm.
your magazine editor. I'm your art director. And I want you to get the maximum color. I want you to get your composition. I want everything to be just right. And so whenever they were shooting the chrome film, they actually worked at it. But once I had to switch over and teach digital, it was like you could see that they were playing with Photoshop and not really being there at the right time and having to think about the photograph, think about what they were doing, what it was going to say to the audience.
So if we want to give somebody some ideas about how to be better now in this current environment, it's to not
Right,
accept the surface level
right.
experience of everything automated,
Yes.
running it through Photoshop to
Right.
dig deeper and say, I have to show up at sunrise to get the sunrise. So I think that's an excellent thing because it translates to me
Mm-hmm.
in what I try to tell people about writing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, yes, we have AI now. And yes, you can get super lazy. So, what do you do to learn
Mm-hmm.
and build that foundation of your vocabulary and to read the John Graves of the world and to be inspired by those kinds of words? If you want to be that kind of writer, then you need to put in
Right.
enough your own reacts to places and people and situations. So, I think that's a great takeaway.
I don't do a lot of it, but when I do, I try to put feeling into it, to where the person can really go on a journey with me. I have to feel it.
Yeah.
It has to come viscerally. And when I feel that need, I may go days without putting a new post up, but whenever I feel that visceral need to express myself, that's when I sit down, and that's whenever I get 1,000 likes. Or like the last one I did, I think maybe on the Rattlesnake Air Base out at Pyote, Texas. I looked at it last night and I had like 4,000 likes. You know?
But you're seeing things and showing things that they've never seen.
Sure.
They've never
Sure.
experienced. Yeah.
And that's what's important. I don't want to go to places and talk about things that everybody sees. I try to be, my own person and convey. I've been lucky, let's put it this way. I have been very fortunate in my career to have seen things that most people will never see because I didn't go a lot to parks, to state parks. I would go on private land holdings, whether it's archaeology, paleontology, historical structures like the Air Force Base that's now abandoned. And those things fascinate me. All these things fascinate me.
Yeah.
And so I try to convey the fascination, the emotion that I feel when I go to these locations to the readership, because I know there's a lot of people out there that want to and that are unable to, incapable of it, or just can't get out anywhere. They're armchair people, they're elderly people, but they still love the message. And I like to tell it in a manner that really touches their soul.
Well, I think you're doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Just from where you are right now, is there
Mm-hmm.
anything, and this is going to be hard because with all the, kind of the accolades you've stacked up over the
Mm-hmm.
years, is there anything that stands out to you as, wow, that was the moment? That's one of the ones I'm going to remember forever. What's the first one that pops to mind?
Oh, well, the one that blew my mind, you talk about accolades?
Yeah, or
Yeah, yeah.
anything, yeah.
Anything. The first one that blew my mind was in 1987, and I get a call from my alma mater, Texas Tech, from an instructor there I was as scared of him as I was a cobra, and in a dark room. He calls me up and he says, you've been designated the outstanding alum for the department. And I went, Dr. Wright, do you remember me? And because I was not an outstanding student, Let's be real frank about it. All I wanted to do was go to school. I wanted to get out and do the things that really excited me. And he laughed and he said, Wyman, it's not what you did, what you achieved when you were at Tech. It's what you've achieved since you've been out of Tech. I said, you might have the right man. But he chuckled on that one. It was but anyway, that was really a great moment. I really appreciated it so much.
Yeah.
And
What's the hardest shot you've ever had to get?
oh man, Elaine, there's been so many. That was a struggle. I shot a story up in the Yukon one time for Sports Afield magazine. I was up there for 3 weeks, and I was telling Celinda last night when it was raining. I said, I remember that day in the Yukon. I had a 50-pound pack on my back full of camera gear and clothes for 9 days, along with 3 other guys, and we were sitting on a boulder. We had just ascended a mountain for 15 hours, and We had to go down 1,000 feet because of a rock slide, and I was sitting in the rain, my boots full of water, my cameras were fogged over, and I was sitting there looking at the ground, and I told one of those guys, I said, if I ever get off this mountain, I will never come back. And I haven't.
And you didn't.
I got the story. That's what mattered.
Oh, I like your stories too. Tell me another story. Tell me another kind of a
Oh,
standout moment.
my goodness. Oh, my word. God, there's so many. I've been to so many places and seen a lot of the places. It's not necessarily the location, but it's the people you meet. Wonderful people. And so often I've related to people that I visit with that I could have never achieved this level without the help of so many across the United States.
Yeah.
Not just in Texas, but everywhere. It just seemed like there's always been the right person at the right time when I needed them. And I wish I could pull up all their names. There's so many, but I can't. But I can see their faces.
Yeah.
And I'm so appreciative because had they not been there, I couldn't have achieved what I did. It really is.
How work, writing or photography makes people feel. So, the audience and how it makes them feel. So, when you look at this body of work, and let's say we're 100 years down the road, what do you hope people who see your images or read your words will feel at that moment?
You know, I told Celinda that whenever I pass, and I read this passage in a book called The Wind when I was doing the Texas Sky book. And even though I think it's a fiction book, and I don't generally read fiction, but this was very captivating. And I was looking for passages to put in my sky book under the imagery. And one of them was, will you watch a prairie sunset and think of me? I said, when I pass, I would like that on my tombstone. Because it's the light, it's the color, that really excites me, that keeps me going. Like just a couple of days ago, I was up in Tucumcari, New Mexico, shooting on a 10,000-acre property for our broker. And he said, what time do you want to get out there? I said, I want to be there at sunrise. And we arrived, and of course, I do a lot of drone work now. Drones are just awesome. I'm a commercial drone operator. And I lifted that drone up and approached that rocky mountainside or that canyon, and that light, I still to this day, after 45 odd years, I still feel the excitement that I did when I first picked up a camera and saw that light and recognized great light, because it energizes me.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the reaction of the readership that they appreciate it as well.
Yeah. You made me teary with your tombstone.
Oh, so I think about it often. At age 74, you start thinking about things, that you used to not.
What other books do you love?
I like history. I like the history of the early day explorers. There's one in particular, oh my word, Commerce on the Prairie. Commerce on the Prairie, written in 1856, I believe. And I was able to find a copy of that, a reprint. Oh my word, the author, I don't recall. I'll think of it here in a minute when I'm not trying to. But it's Commerce on the Prairie. It's not a large volume book, but it is a wonderful read about a person that came from the East, and because of ill health when he was young, he came west to see if it would help his and I think his father was a physician, and suggested that he go west for his health. And wow, that guy saw some country. I mean, from Chihuahua, Mexico to Durango, Mexico to Arizona, across the panhandle of Texas, talks about going along the Canadian and the places that he saw in all of those journeys as a trader, trading goods down in Durango. Talks about, he said, the bandits are prevalent here in the Mexican state of Coahuila or Durango. And he said, we have to have our guns in view at all times. It's the only way that we can be safe.
Wow.
Yes, and that was in 1836. He wrote this in 1856.
Man.
Oh, there's just so many. I love the Buffalo Hunter books written by buffalo hunters. The actual J. Wright Moore wrote about his life on the Buffalo Plains. I actually held J. Wright's gun that his granddaughter still had, a 50-90 Sharps, that he killed 8,000 buffalo with on the Texas
Man,
plains. Yes. I held that gun in my hands.
that's up there.
That's history. And I just love, and I think a lot of my appreciation of history was probably initiated when I was a small boy. I grew up working on the ranch where my dad was the foreman, a 27,000 acre ranch here in Knox County. And he worked old gentlemen who were born in the 1800s, 1880s, 1890s. And I worked alongside these old gentlemen. And I would ask them stories about their lives and what the land was like when they first came. And it's still today, those stories still stay with me.
Yeah, I bet they do.
There are so many great books out there. You have to go in on Amazon and just search for them.
Yeah.
But there's so much that's, as I say, they're nonfiction and just really describe the land that we all pass over now and take for granted. One time I remember David published a letter that was written to Texas Parks and Wildlife when I did an article and I shot a piece on the rolling plains of Texas, and David and Bill put it in the magazine. It was a photo essay.
Oh,
And this person wrote a letter, and David published it in the letter section. And it said, I never knew that part of Texas was as beautiful as it is. Because of Wyman's pictures, I now see that there is beauty there. And my deal is just stop, and look and go through at the right time when the light is right, and just be a part of the land, become part of the landscape, and listen to the sounds of the land. And not only visually, audibly, just absorb it. And then you can realize that some of what seemingly is very mundane country can be very beautiful. And because of David and Bill believing in my work, I've actually think that I've focused a lot of attention from an audience that would otherwise not even look at this part of the country.
I bet you're right. And I can't wrap it up any better than that. So I'm going to let you have the last word right there. One thing that we will do is put links to everything and let people find you. So we'll have it in the show
Okay.
notes. We'll have it on our blog so that people
Okay.
can go discover you and some of these other writers, and so kind of expand their horizons, so to speak.
Well, I appreciate
So
that.
I just thank you so much for
Thanks
sharing.
for having me.
Yeah, sharing your time and your stories, and
You bet.
I just your work gives us, like we said, not just a view of Texas, but a feeling of what it means to live closer to the land and to see that beauty, and that we can share it in images and words. So
Absolutely.
thank you for preserving your little corner of the state.
I appreciate everything. Appreciate your kind words, and thanks for having me on.